The small and picturesque town of Monroe, Louisiana, served as the setting for the emotional and captivating story of Desiree, a woman whose life was marked by unimaginable losses and challenges. There was something special about the aura surrounding the streets of Monroe, where the Washita River snaked peacefully, contrasting with Desiree's tumultuous life. 20 years ago, Desiree was a vibrant woman with a contagious smile and a heart overflowing with love. Pregnant with her daughter Joy, she devoted herself to carefully preparing the baby's room and dreaming of the happy days she would have with her little family. Easton, her devoted husband, shared the same enthusiasm and excitement, eager to be a father again and further strengthen the family bonds. In the days leading up to Joy's birth, Desiree and Easton were like two joyful birds, building a nest for their new hatchling. The house was always filled with laughter and anticipation, with each small preparation for Joy's arrival adding a touch of charm and happiness to the home. The tiny baby dresses, the fresh paint in the child's room, and even the gentle melody of the music box playing lullabies seemed to fill every corner of the house with love and joy. They also had a 3-year-old son, Blake, who even at his young age seemed to already feel the joy of his sister's arrival. However, like a sudden storm that crashes onto a summer day, fate cruelly interrupted these moments of happiness. The night that should have been like any other turned into a fateful and somber night, tattooing an indelible mark of sadness on Desiree's heart. Easton, always punctual, did not return from work at the usual time. As the hours passed, an uncomfortable feeling began to settle in Desiree's heart. And then, the news came: the knock on the door, a police officer with a somber face, and the news that shattered her world. Easton had suffered a fatal accident. The tragedy came cruelly and mercilessly, like lightning that tears through the sky on a moonless night. Suddenly, Desiree found herself a widow, alone with her son Blake and the imminent arrival of Joy. The ground seemed to open up beneath her feet, swallowing her into an abyss of pain and despair. With a broken heart, Desiree found herself on the brink of an emotional precipice, facing the cruel reality of having to give birth to her daughter Joy in a world that now seemed empty and cold without Easton's presence. But even in the face of the most brutal adversity, she knew she would have to find the strength to continue, for herself and for her children. Devastated and grieving, Desiree found the strength to face the birth of her daughter Joy, hoping that the baby's arrival would help heal her broken heart. However, the universe did not cease in her suffering. Soon after the birth, a sudden and inexplicable blackout struck the hospital, plunging it into darkness and chaos. It was in this moment of vulnerability and despair that the unthinkable happened. Joy was stolen from her crib, disappearing into the darkness like a ghost. What should have been a moment of renewal and celebration for Desiree turned into an endless nightmare, as if the universe conspired to snatch happiness from her hands. The pain of losing her husband and newborn daughter was unbearable, but Desiree knew she had to stay strong for her 3-year-old son Blake. Thus, she embraced her resilience and determination, promising herself that she would find joy, no matter what it took, and honor the memory of her beloved Easton. Facing the painful reality of being a single mother, Desiree found herself playing the role of both father and mother to her 3-year-old son, Blake. Despite the abyss of sadness and grief that consumed her, she promised herself she would remain resilient and care for him with all the strength she had left. Over the next 20 years, she became a true warrior, taking on various jobs, no matter how exhausting or humble they might be, to ensure Blake's livelihood and well-being. Even in the face of exhaustion and despair, Desiree never gave up hope of finding her lost daughter, Joy. The memory of her innocent face fueled her determination and kept the flame of hope alive in her heart. Meanwhile, Blake, nurtured by his mother's love and sacrifice, grew up to become a hard-working and diligent man. He found employment at a local factory, where he excelled for his work ethic and dedication. Even through life's hardships, he never complained, helping to support Desiree and dreaming of the day they would find joy. Desiree's life, however, was about to take an unexpected turn. An employment opportunity arose at the opulent mansion of the Chapman family, one of the most prominent families in the city. The family was led by the savvy Ingrid Chapman, a young entrepreneur who, after the death of her father Bobby, took the reins of the family business with fierce determination and a sharp mind for business. Desiree then entered the Chapman mansion, unaware that fate was weaving a plot that would reunite the scattered threads of her life in a way she could never have imagined. Bobby Chapman was a visionary man, gifted with a sharp business sense and a nose for success. Over the years, he built an empire that spanned across multiple sectors, consolidating the fortune and prestige of the Chapman family. However, Bobby recognized that not all members of his family shared his abilities and ambitions. He knew that his wife, Bridget, and his youngest son, Wade, were incapable of managing the business with the same competence and shrewdness he had shown. Instead, they were content to enjoy the luxuries provided by the family fortune, spending extravagantly and irresponsibly. That's why, in his later years, Bobby made the decision to entrust the command of his empire to his daughter, Ingrid. He saw in her the determination and intelligence that Bridget and Wade lacked. Ingrid, since young, had shown an interest in the family business, accompanying her father to meetings and diving into books to learn everything she could about the corporate world. Bobby knew that by entrusting the responsibility to Ingrid, he was ensuring that his legacy would be preserved and built upon by capable hands. Ingrid, always determined and dedicated, admirably honored her father's legacy. She faced the challenges of the business world with courage and skill, and in no time became a respected leader both by her employees and her peers in the business world. Her ability to make wise and assertive decisions, combined with her ability to inspire and motivate those around her, solidified the Chapman family's position as a powerhouse in the economic landscape. The Chapman mansion thus reflected the success and opulence achieved under Ingrid's leadership. Each room displayed the wealth and good taste inherited from her father and cultivated by her, an indisputable evidence of the power and legacy that Bobby had entrusted to his most capable daughter. Ingrid, known for her generosity and empathy, welcomed Desiree into the Chapman mansion with warm and sincere hospitality. She understood that everyone, regardless of their social position, deserved to be treated with kindness and respect. With a genuine smile and encouraging words, Ingrid made Desiree feel welcomed and valued from the very beginning. However, not everyone in the mansion shared Ingrid's compassionate disposition. Bridget, the matriarch of the Chapman family, was a prejudiced and petty woman who saw the servants as inferior beings unworthy of her attention or consideration. Her heart was dominated by a deep disdain for those who, in her view, did not belong to her social circle. Seeing Desiree working in her home, Bridget was consumed by a feeling of aversion that manifested in every look and gesture she directed towards the new employee. While Ingrid treated Desiree with kindness and understanding, Bridget watched her with a look of disdain and superiority, as if Desiree's presence in her home was a personal affront to her and everything the Chapman family represented. This growing tension and the unequal treatment Desiree received from the two women revealed the profound differences in their characters and values, setting the stage for an inevitable conflict in the heart of the Chapman mansion. On a starry night, moved by her malice and contempt for Desiree, Bridget conceived a plan that would change the fate of everyone in the Chapman mansion. Enveloped in an aura of cruel satisfaction, she took one of her most valuable necklaces, a dazzling piece encrusted with diamonds and emeralds. With a jewel in hand, she stealthily approached the room where Desiree kept her personal belongings. With a furtive glance and a Machiavellian smile on her face, Bridget opened Desiree's bag, which was carelessly resting on the dresser, and placed the jewel inside, taking care to hide it under the fabric lining. As she closed the bag, she felt a somber satisfaction, believing that her plan was perfectly orchestrated. The next day, during breakfast, Bridget summoned everyone present to the dining room. With a face full of false concern, she announced, "I am devastated. My emerald necklace, a gift from Bobby, has disappeared. I left it in my room last night and now it's gone." When the search for the necklace resulted in its discovery in Desiree's bag, Bridget assumed the posture of indignation and betrayal. "Desiree, how could you? Stealing from us, after all we've done for you," Bridget exclaimed, her eyes shining with triumph. Despite her pleas of innocence, Desiree was forced to leave the Chapman mansion under Bridget's accusations. Ingrid, although clearly disturbed and confused, had no choice but to dismiss Desiree, as the evidence seemed undeniable. The house, once full of warmth and kindness, was now shrouded in sadness and betrayal while Bridget's malice was fully revealed. Leaving the mansion with a heavy heart and the feeling of injustice, Desiree cast a last glance at the house that had been her home and job. It was at that moment that something caught her attention. Ingrid, standing at the edge of the garden, wore a bracelet that shone with a familiar glow. It was a simple bracelet made of colorful beads and a heart-shaped pendant. Desiree recognized the bracelet as the same one she had given to Joy on the day of her birth as a symbol of love and hope. As she walked towards the mansion gate, Desiree couldn't shake the image of the bracelet from her mind. Could Ingrid be her lost daughter? Uncertainty and hope grew inside her, making her heart beat faster. Days later, Ingrid sought out Desiree. She was restless, unable to accept the circumstances of the supposed theft. "Desiree, I need to tell the truth. I don't believe you stole my mother's jewels. Something about this whole situation doesn't seem right," Ingrid said, her gaze determined and concerned. Desiree, with a racing heart and trembling hands, decided to share her suspicions with Ingrid. "Ingrid, I saw the bracelet you were wearing on the day I was fired. It's identical to the one I gave to my daughter Joey on the day she was born," Desiree revealed, her eyes brimming with emotion. "And where is your daughter, Desiree?" "You never told me you had a daughter. To me you only had a son," replied Ingrid. "Ingrid, I had a daughter 20 years ago, but she was stolen. Since then, I've been searching for her. The only clue I have is a little bracelet I put on her right after she was born," replied a trembling Desiree. Surprised by the revelation, Ingrid hesitated for a moment before responding, "I always felt that there was something strange about my family history. My mother was never very open about my past. If you believe that I could be your daughter, then we need to uncover the truth together." From that moment on, Desiree and Ingrid joined forces to unravel the mystery that surrounded their lives, determined to find the truth that could change both of their destinies forever. Ingrid, with the burning determination of a woman in search of truth, confronted her mother Bridget in her luxurious office at the Chapman mansion. The air was heavy with tension and anticipation. "Mother, I need you to tell me the truth about my past. Desiree believes that I may be her stolen daughter. What did you do? How did I end up in this family?" Ingrid demanded, her gaze piercing and challenging. Bridget hesitated, her face pale and trembling as she tried to formulate a response. "So you really want to believe the delusions of a maid who stole from us?" Bridget said, visibly irritated. "It's okay, Mom. I believe you. But I find it very strange. Dad always said we were premature babies, but we were very big children. But if you have nothing to fear, I want a DNA test, and if you refuse, I'll do it with Desiree," Ingrid said, determined. Finally, Bridget, under the suffocating pressure of accusation and expectation, crumbled. Her eyes, once sparkling with arrogance and disdain, were now flooded with desperate tears. Her faltering voice delivered the naked truth that she had tried so hard to hide. "Yes, it's true. That poor woman whom you treated like a mere maid is your real mother." She paused, taking a breath before continuing. "I couldn't get pregnant. I was desperate to have a child to fill the void that consumed me inside. I was a poor woman, but I had grand dreams. Dreams that I knew could never be realized if I continued to live in scarcity and deprivation. So, I made a decision. Your father, he always wanted a son, an heir to his empire, but those incompetents made a mistake. They stole you a girl instead of a boy. I was furious, but I couldn't do anything, so I forced them to steal Wade too." Bridget's voice, once strong and confident, was now filled with bitterness and regret. "But, to my surprise, your father grew attached to you. He loved you more than I could ever imagine. And Wade, well, he was always lazy, never living up to his father's expectations. But it didn't matter, because I had gotten what I wanted. I had escaped unscathed. Then, one day, I come home and find that woman here. Of all the people you could have hired, it had to be her. I needed to do something. I put my jewelry in her bag, hoping you would send her away. But you've always been too kind. always defending the weak and oppressed. You had to go after her, didn't you? At this point, Bridget's voice became venomous, full of spite and resentment. You were no good. I should have left you in that hospital to live that miserable life that poor woman would have given you. You're ungrateful. Ingrid was dumbfounded, stunned, and teary-eyed at her mother's confession. Her heart raced in her chest as she struggled to process the shocking truth that had just been revealed. How could you do this, Mom? She asked in a whisper, unable to believe what she had just heard. You stole 2 innocent children and destroyed their families. I'm Joy, and Wade is also a stolen child. You caused so much pain and suffering, Ingrid said, her voice trembling as tears streamed down her face. Reality collapsed upon her as the puzzle pieces began to fit in her mind. Everything she had believed about her life until now seemed to crumble before her eyes, and the pain and sadness were overwhelming. Bridget, now sobbing, tried to explain her actions. I just wanted a family. I wanted a better life, and I gave you a better life. You should thank me. If you had grown up in that family, where you would be today, working as a waitress? Wake up, Ingrid. That poor woman wouldn't have been able to give you the good life you have. Ingrid, sobbing, replied she would have given me real motherly love, something you never gave me, or my brother. You always left us with nannies. You were always shallow and never really took care of us. You a cold and bitter woman who only cares about money and material things. You're narcissistic and always put me down, always found faults in everything I did. My father loved me, but you just despised me and used me when you needed to. The truth was finally uncovered, and Ingrid and Desiree's journey to find each other had come to an end. But a new chapter was about to begin, as justice needed to be served and lost lives needed to be found and restored. With the shocking revelation of the truth, Ingrid's universe disintegrated and reconstructed itself in a single fraction of a second. The ground seemed to open beneath her feet and then solidify again, but now with a completely different scenery. Her life, once based on lies and deceit, was now illuminated by the raw and painful reality. Bridget, the once untouchable matriarch, was now just a criminal caught in her own web of lies. Justice, however, was swift and merciless. Bridget was arrested, her proud face now marked by defeat and humiliation. The walls of her mansion could no longer protect her, and her money and influence could not buy her innocence. And then, in a surprising twist, Bridget found herself forced to negotiate with her back against the wall and no other option. She cooperated with the authorities to dismantle the gang she had hired so many years ago. The woman who once delighted in her luxuries and pleasures was now in a cold cell, negotiating her cooperation in exchange for a chance at freedom. Plea bargaining, a concept she never imagined being associated with, was now her only hope of escaping total punishment for her actions. An irony not lost on Ingrid, who watched it all with a mix of disbelief, relief, and a hint of sadness. The Chapman mansion, once standing as a symbol of prosperity and success, now held a dark secret revealed. Ingrid's life, once seeming perfect, was now plunged into turbulence and confusion. However, amidst the chaos, there was a bright light. She had finally found her true mother, Desiree, and her brother, Blake. Desiree, who had spent 2 decades wondering about the fate of her lost daughter, now had her back in her arms. Blake, who had always dreamed of having a sister, finally met Joy. The family, who had been torn apart by a cruel act, was now reunited, ready to begin healing the wounds of the past and building a future together. The story of Desiree, Blake, and Joy is a lesson about the power of love and the resilience of the human spirit. Despite the adversities, they never stopped believing, never stopped hoping. And in the end, they found the happiness they had been seeking, and a shocking but emotional outcome that will forever be engraved in the hearts of all who followed their journey. And so ends the story of Desiree, Joy, Ingrid, and the Chapman family. A story of love, loss, pain, and redemption. A story that shows how the truth can be hidden but never forgotten, and how a mother's love never dies. The story reminds us that even in the toughest situations, we can find hope and strength to move forward. May we learn from the mistakes of the past and build a better future for ourselves and those around us. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this emotional story. Thank you.